And we're live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the World of Gray podcast. In a society divided by black and white arguments, we are here to help you explore the world of gray. I am Columbus Cougar Meat Kid Colin Cutler.
And I am the invisible handsome Pete.
That's right. You look good today.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
Thanks for coming on.
I really appreciate it.
I'm glad you appreciate it. Jade Roberts, what's going on? You still there? Oh, two people.
Oh.
Woo-hoo.
We went from
People
7 to 2 that quickly.
Want to talk about politics, and this is kind of what we're going to talk about today. So.
Yeah, but that's just how you know what? People just love it or hate it.
And this is a good example of the political discourse in the world right now. This is how many people want to participate in any of this shit. Crazy Bernie and Sleepy Joe. Here we go.
Yeah, see, this is one of our newest friends, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
And he is an amazing guy. He's got a pretty cool backstory as well. But he is all about the politics as well. So this
I love it.
Fantastic.
Well, Joe, I want you to comment as much as you possibly can here. We have Pete has a watch party going, right?
No, I don't know how to fucking do it.
This guy's the worst. I have a watch party going. You got to share it, then go to your page, and then start a watch party on that share. So I fucked that up too. So anything you want to comment, go for it. So the structure today, I am going to kind of explain to everyone my ideologies before I started following politics, which was around when Trump got elected, and how that's kind of morphed and changed since. I'm also going to do this in a chronological order that makes it easy for Pete to take clips out of this live cast because I've been really bad at that. So yeah. So as a teenager, I was very much like my nephew who we've talked about. I was very much into conspiracy theories. I hated politics. I didn't even know the difference between Democrats and Republicans because I didn't really feel there was a difference. Kind of, my teens, I was very the George Bush era, and the 9/11 conspiracy. And so for me, my exposure to politics was George Bush, 9/11. I very much believed that conspiracy. So for me, it was government is evil. It's all rigged. It doesn't matter who's in. And for the most part, I don't necessarily not believe that still. I'm just a little less cynical within democracy, right? I also still don't follow Canadian politics very much, which is a problem. I probably should.
For being American, a Canadian, you are very stuck on American. I don't know.
Right. So because I didn't follow politics, or because I thought politics were all rigged to get... Carrie has joined us. Hello, Carrie Lee. Because I believed all politics were rigged, my ideologies came from a few different sources, but Peter Joseph was someone I still follow to this day. I still think he has some really good ideas, but I followed him pretty religiously as a teenager. So if you don't know who Peter Joseph is, he was the director, producer for the Zeitgeist trilogy, which the first one debunks religion a little bit and then goes into banking mechanics. And all three of his movies are a societal critique, right? Mostly about capitalism and market. Not even necessarily capitalism, but just money in general. So that was very much my ideology, which I still to this day believe that we need a cultural shift of collectivism for humans to evolve. And what I think has morphed and changed over the years is I don't know if that's possible currently in our reality of society. It was a utopian vision that I bought into as a young teenager, and now that I'm older and more cynical, I don't really believe that that's necessarily the easiest thing to accomplish at this point. But if you read Peter Joseph's book, The New Human Rights Movement, it's got some really, really good ideas of how we can move forward, but it's really extremely lefty. The Flow Mike Chisholm has joined us.
Oh,
what up,
hello, Mike?
So that was kind of my ideologies when I was younger. Was it doesn't matter how we get there. We just need to get to a point where we take care of each other, house and feed each other, and take care, have medical care as a human right. So I still believe all those things. I think just how we get there and the process and how that all works, I think I understand it a little bit more. But I still don't understand the political process all that well. So still taking my opinions with a grain of salt. Ross has joined. It's true. Mike's here, and it's true. So, 4 years ago or whatever, when Trump is running for president, this is where I started actually wondering if change could be possible. Now, keep in mind, I knew nothing about Trump's business history.
Yep.
I only knew that he was a billionaire, which I don't actually believe is true now. But at the time, he was a perceived billionaire coming off The Apprentice. And I didn't follow, the pundits that follow politics. I didn't, watch any of these independent news sources like Kyle Klinsky's Secular Talk or the Humanist Report or the Rational National that I do now. Guys that aren't funded by big corporations that really weed through the bullshit of politics. So which I watch now. And like I said, I didn't know anything about Trump's business history. So for me, I remember having this conversation with my brother at a family event. I said, well, if he's a billionaire and he's putting his own, because even with my limited knowledge of politics, I knew that money in politics was a problem, right? Yep. So he doesn't have billionaire backers, so maybe that's the solution. So I think a part of me was like, yeah, it'd be interesting if Trump gets in. And the stuff I had heard about Hillary, there was people that say she's got a hit list a mile long, and there's just kind of the lesser of two evils. So that's really what got me.
Morning, Aaron.
Aaron has joined us. I love Aaron. She's looking good too. She's in the best shape of her life, I think.
Oh, so she definitely has made a transformation, and it's amazing.
You love it. So here I am. I'm following the election with Trump. Trump gets elected, and I was like, oh, this is interesting, right?
Yep.
So then I start following it, which I think a lot of people didn't follow politics until Trump. So if we're going to give any highlight to the Trump presidency, I think it got some more eyes on the process. So then I really started following. So once a lot of the outrage of Trump started happening, and people, CNN and MSNBC, these left news. What was that?
It's my world.
We got one person joining us on the YouTube. I'll flip back and forth, and I will answer questions. I got the watch party going too. I got to watch the comments.
I'm trying to watch because we're both on separate watch parties.
Okay. I'll do better. People. I promise.
Once we have our actual podcast studio, everything will be linked to one, and we won't have to worry about this.
So we're following kind of my chronological line of how I got into following politics. And then, so we're talking about the kind of right as Trump got elected and how he acted as a populist, right? So Mike said they used the Ross Perot tactic on us. We need a real outsider. What is that? I don't know what that means. What's the Ross Perot tactic? Mike can explain that. I'm sure it's a bait and switch.
What is
I don't know. So, but to Mike's point, for me, as someone that didn't know anything about politics, Trump's saying all these things that sound really good. So even I bought into them, right? They're called populist messages. He campaigned to the left of Hillary. So Hillary Clinton was supposed to be the left, the Democrat, and Trump politic to the left of her. You have a YouTube. I do. Mike, you have a YouTuber.
We are getting nowhere fast
I have
today.
two YouTube followers. No, you can cut all this. This is the clips for you.
I know. I love it.
And even in the clips, you can like cut through this and go back to what I'm talking about. So Trump's been elected. People are talking about like on the left mainstream media. I keep hearing people kind of shitting on Trump and blah, blah, blah. So people keep coming up to me and, in random conversations in my everyday life, talking about Trump and how he's this terrible person and blah, blah, blah. And for me, I always was under the ideology, and my dad taught me when I was younger, is don't believe everything you hear, right?
Yep.
Always take everything with a grain of salt. So I said, well, mainstream media does blow things out of proportion, so maybe some of it's true, but right? So I kind of defended Trump a little bit before I knew much about him.
Yep. And
then some of these documentaries started coming up, and I started reading some articles about like where his family's money came from, and I realized that Trump is a for real con man. Even his campaign was a giant fraud.
Mm-hmm.
He played the American people by going to the left of Hillary, and then on the other side, just playing into people's emotional fears of immigrants and build the wall and all these things. So now I'm starting to get like curious about politics because this is interesting now. So now we got this con man in the White House and everyone's freaking out and it's chaos. And so all these people saying, oh, well, and they're blaming everyone for Hillary losing. But, then I started following all these independent news sources saying, well, I mean, what do you expect when you put someone like Hillary as the other choice? Because obviously people aren't going to come out and vote. And then I started kind of following Bernie Sanders. This is how I started kind of learning about Bernie Sanders because what happened? Like, why did Hillary get voted in, right? And so I kind of paid attention to what happened in the primary in 2016 with Bernie, and there's some controversy there. And then Michael Moore's documentary Fahrenheit 11/9 came out, which talks about that. And so I was, really like curious. And in learning about Bernie Sanders, this is the first time I had ever heard about a politician in my lifetime that actually had a platform that met the same morals that I have. And I'm talking about American and Canadian, right?
Yep.
Maybe the NDP leader now kind of along the same lines as well. But for someone that actually had a message and had a shot at getting into the presidential nominee, I started really getting behind Bernie Sanders. If anyone follows me, follows World of Grey on Twitter or follows Colin Cutler on Facebook, I'm a big Bernie Sanders fan. And we're going to talk about my gaps in knowledge when it comes to these candidates a little bit later. So then I really got into the Bernie Sanders campaign and I've really started following that. And the interesting part of that, and if anyone wants to comment on this, now is kind of where we start getting to today. It looks, and I've made this prediction before, but it looks like they're just repeating 2016.
Yeah.
And this is where we're at now. And this is where I'd like to open up the discussion.
The one thing I do have to say is that, like I was saying at the beginning before we were live, is that I really hadn't looked at anything as far as politics went until you and I started talking about it. And once you and I started talking about it, it's kind of opened up my eyes on a whole bunch of things.
Like
one of the funniest things that I saw the other day was a meme of them, and it said old farts battling for what?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't understand. Like, they both look like they should have been retired a long time ago.
You're talking about Biden and Sanders?
Yes, Biden and Sanders should have been retired a long time ago.
So let's talk about that. So I disagree with that.
Okay.
I don't disagree that maybe Sanders should have been allowed to retire at some point, but I think the difference is Bernie Sanders is not retiring because he feels like he's the only one that's actually going to push any structural change, which I would agree with.
Yep.
And Joe Biden is running to stop Bernie because he's a name. Yeah. I feel like a lot of people told him to run. He's failed at this before. He's ran for president before and failed. He's lost a lot of elections. Like Biden does not have a good record for winning elections.
No.
But I think because of the name recognition, he was kind of told that he needs to run. But I don't think that Bernie Sanders' age has anything to do with his ability to run the country at this point. You listen to him on the Joe Rogan podcast. He's still very articulate. I'll agree that maybe all the plans he has will never come to fruition. But this is one thing that always drives me crazy with this political cycle is people saying two things, that Bernie's too extreme and all his plans are too expensive and we can't have a socialist because he's going to do all of these things. And they take every message he has and they bring it into one thing and they go, that's too much. And then on the flip side, they go, well, Bernie Sanders is never going to get anything done.
Yeah.
Exactly. What is it? Are you worried that he's going to just take over everything and ruin everything? Or is he going to get nothing done? I just don't understand the hypocrisy of those talking points. And I don't think Bernie Sanders is that left. Like in what's popular to the American people, in my opinion, he's the moderate. It's like I always say it's the labels. I have a client who's American, who's centrist, and we have amazing talks about this. But it's when you just blanket things with, oh, well, that's socialism and that's that and that's that. In Canada, a Bernie Sanders message would be like center left. Yeah. Like to a degree. Because if the Conservative Party took over tomorrow, they're not going to take away our universal health care.
No.
Would there be fucking riots in the street? So it just depends what we're talking about. Universal healthcare is not necessarily a far left idea. Universal basic income would be more of a far left idea than a lot of things Bernie's recommending. I don't even think that's that far, right? So Mike Chisholm had a couple comments here, but there was one up here that I really liked. So, talking about why Trump got elected, that can be a clip. See how I did that?
Yes.
I'm going to do it one more time for you.
Yeah, do it one more time.
So, talking about reasons why Trump got elected, Mike Chisholm has a comment here. I think he got elected because people want real change, an outsider. I think the powers that be wanted him so he could be a giant distraction to everyone while they do stuff in the background. Political sleight of hand. I 100% agree with everything in that comment right there. I think Trump was elected because he campaigned to the left of Hillary and people wanted real change, which I think is what Bernie Sanders actually offers. And there's a lot of people right now comparing the Bernie Sanders campaign to the Trump campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And Sanders is kind of like trying to defend, or people are trying to defend Sanders. I don't think it's wrong. I think it is like the Trump campaign in the fact that people that are behind it want real change. The difference is Bernie Sanders will actually fight for that change. He's not going to do a bait and switch ideologies after he gets put into office. So I think it's true. I think Bernie Sanders is like a Donald Trump. And I think the reasons why Donald Trump got elected are still there. They're still festering. Andrew Yang talks about this all the time. And now you have Joe Biden running for president under the main campaign ideology of just defeating Trump, which is exactly what Hillary did in 2016.
Yep.
So the substance, the most important thing is beating Donald Trump. The most important thing is, sure, but to beat Donald Trump, you need to have a message that makes people feel like you are trying to improve their lives, because that's what you're trying to do as a president, improve everybody's lives. And I just feel like it's dangerous territory to just put all your eggs in the we need to defeat Donald Trump basket.
Well, the biggest thing is the way that I've been seeing it and the way that things look is they fill people's heads with shit and get them to vote for them. And that's just my personal sight on things.
So I agreed with a part of that. I think where I would elaborate is everyone voting, in my opinion, the majority of people voting. Some people don't. Some people want status quo. Actually, a lot of people want status quo. So I'm not going to say the majority. Well, it is still the majority, but maybe not a huge majority. But some people want no change, right?
Yep.
But I think a huge amount of voters in America want to see some sort of change. And in these election cycles, everyone is talking about what type of progressive change they're going to offer, even if a lot of the people on that stage are bullshitting, right? So you got the Sanders who really want structural change, and then everyone else trying to put enough of a platform of structural change out there, but then holding enough of it back not to freak out the centrists and just playing that political line every 4 years.
Yep.
And then they'll do nothing. Biden would probably fix a lot of the Obamacare stuff that got dismantled under Trump. I think that's basically all you'll get from Joe Biden is all the things that Trump dismantled that Obama put in. Biden will work to put it all back so that we're right back where we were before the 2016 election, which I think a lot of people want. But I believe that is not going to fix the underlying problems that existed before the Trump presidency. And I think there's a good chance that putting Joe Biden through as the Democratic nomination will be very similar to Hillary Clinton, and you'll have low voter turnout, and Trump will get reelected. This was the prediction I made months ago, months and months ago.
When you and I talked about that,
I made this prediction before Biden bombed the first 3 states. And then after those first 3 states, I said, well, Bernie may be in the lead right now, but they'll put all their eggs in someone's basket, and I think they'll still screw him over, maybe even at the convention. So just a reminder, you have to get so many delegates. So you get a percentage, whatever your percentage of votes are in each state, you get that percentage of delegates as long as you're above 15%. So you bring those delegates to the convention, where then the Democratic Party decides who is the nominee. If you have a majority, it's automatic. If you have a plurality, they get to then decide. So after Biden bombed in the first 3 states, I was like, well, maybe Sanders will be ahead as a plurality going into the convention, but then they'll give it to someone else at the convention. And then right before Super Tuesday, so anyone that's not been following this, Bernie Sanders wins the first 3 states. Debatable if you talk about Iowa, but I believe he if you haven't heard about Iowa, I did a video on that. Google that shit because Iowa's a clusterfuck. I don't even know if they even got all the votes figured out. But Sanders won the first three. And Biden was like third and fourth in some of these states, and maybe even fifth. Like he was dying. And then right before Super Tuesday, Pete Buttigieg dropped out, Amy Klobuchar dropped out, and they all backed Biden, as well as Beto O'Rourke, who was already out. He backed Biden. Obama apparently made some calls to get those people to drop out. So now Obama's involved because they don't want Sanders because those people, they're all have rich donors. They're all making a ton of money and they don't want tax breaks. They don't want to disrupt the status quo. And then Super Tuesday hit and Sanders got destroyed. And hey, he held his own in a lot of states. He won California, which has the most delegates out of any state. So he's still in the race.
Yeah.
But when it was all said and done, Biden was now leading in total delegates, and he still is leading in total delegates by almost 100. It's like I forget what the numbers are. 660 to 570 or 580. I don't know.
I think it was 693 the last time I looked.
Anyways, and if you look at the polls going into these next states, Biden's ahead in most of them, including Michigan. So this is not good. This is not good for the Sanders campaign. So now this is where we're at. So what's going to happen moving forward? See how I'm trying to do titles for you?
Yes, I love it that you're actually really doing this. Yeah, you're doing really well today.
So where are we now, and what do I think is going to happen moving forward? Well, I'm back to my original prediction. This is what I said. They're going to smear Bernie Sanders, which if you followed the debates up until now, there was one debate where it was everyone versus Sanders. Actually, it was a couple debates, but one of the debates, it actually helped Sanders in the poll. And then they skipped one. They went after Bloomberg. And then the next one, they went, that didn't help. We still need to go after Sanders. And then out of desperation, Biden drops out. Everyone but Biden drops out of the centrist vote, and they push Biden. Now Biden's in the lead. So what I think is going to happen moving forward is I honestly, at this point, two things I would like to bring up. One, I don't think Bernie Sanders is even going to have a plurality of delegates going into the convention. So I think Biden's going to go through pretty smoothly. I don't think there's going to be a ton of controversy. You're going to have a lot of angry Bernie supporters, but I don't think Bernie Sanders is going to be able to pull it off. I want to be wrong. I've said this since the first prediction. I love Bernie Sanders. I love his ideology. That his world is the future I want to live in, right? But I don't think he's going to get there. I think he's got too much of an uphill battle, and I think he's crumbling a little bit. He's kind of all over the place. He's now trying to put out ads where Obama's praising him, which was like what he tried to avoid. He was supposed to be anti-establishment. So I think there's a little bit of that. And I also think that if Biden goes through, he's going to lose in the general to Trump.
Yeah.
So I really don't see Bernie getting there. And I really don't see Biden beating Trump in the general. I don't think it's impossible. I think there's some factors that we can talk about, and we can talk about my lapse in my gaps in knowledge, which would be the next little thing here. But
I mean, the biggest thing is at this point, I don't think anyone's going to beat Trump. And that's kind of just how, from everything that I've been learning in the political world, is that Trump is basically sitting on an empire and he's going nowhere.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that. Because I agree. I think because the Democratic Party is getting so split between the centrist vote and the progressive vote, and because they've attacked each other so much, all those attacks both ways, whether Biden goes through or Sanders goes through, has given the Trump campaign so much material to use in the general. I think I'm actually not sure, but I think Trump almost should debate, especially if it's Biden, because I think if Trump debates Biden, he can steamroll him a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
If it's Sanders, maybe he should just avoid the debates and just like campaign ads and just smear, because I think that would work if you just smear Sanders in ads where he can't defend himself and just like spread that to old people. I think they'll vote for Trump. But I think you're right. I think anyone just because of all the arguments and because of how many smears, I think Sanders is still the more electable candidate.
Yes. Because
I think Biden just wants such little change, and if he does debate or even just talk, he's gonna damper himself. So one other thing I'd like to talk about, and I really would like to hear other people's opinions on this. Carrie has joined us. Is Joe Biden fit to be the Democratic nominee going into the general election? So here's a conversation that's been ramping up in the last week is Joe Biden's cognitive decline.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've watched any of these mashup videos of some of his gaffes.
Yep.
It is not good. And I'm not here to say he has dementia. I'm not here to make fun of him. I know he had a stutter growing up, so those like little missteps in his speech when he's trying to get a word out, that's not even what I'm talking about.
No.
What I'm talking about is his complete unawareness of what's going on. Complete. And it's interesting because this American client I have, who will not be named, but she doesn't even like Biden and she voted for him. Just because people don't want Sanders, they're not ready for that structural change. Or in her defense, she's a very smart woman, very, very smart woman. She always also calls me out because I say girl too much instead of woman, and it's hilarious. She always calls me on it, but she's incredibly smart, so she could be right. Like she goes by statistics. She's like, well, Biden statistically is more likely to win the nomination and beat Trump, and maybe she's right, and maybe I'm wrong, right? But I don't think people are ready for that structural change. But if you watch some of the things Biden has been saying, like he confused his wife and his sister the first thing when he was celebrating Super Tuesday, and then everyone goes, oh, well, they switched on him because that's what he said. It's like, well, I didn't go back and watch the full thing, but someone was saying that they went back and watched the full thing and they didn't switch on him. He just said that. And then the other thing is, even if they did switch on him, like even out of my peripherals, I can tell the difference between my sister and Jen.
Oh, 100%.
Like if I turned and even just got a tiny glance, I'd be like, oh shit, that's not Jen. Right?
Yep.
So this is the guy that's supposed to be leading the country. So again, just more fuel for Trump.
There was a lot of things that were being said that he's just not physically fit to be running. And that's, like I've been watching a lot of the...
I'm good. How are you?
A lot of the things that have been going on is that, he's just not... He's losing all material that he had going forward, and he's like going backwards now. So,
well, and let's just talk about some of the things he said in these conferences, or like press conferences or rallies or whatever. He had this weird rant about how these African American children used to hang out with him at the pool, and he had hairy legs, and they would rub his legs, and he's used to kids being on his lap. And I like when kids are sitting on my lap. Like, what are you even talking about? And I was saying to someone like that, even if that clip is out of context,
yes.
Like, what the fuck are you even talking about? He said he's running for U.S. Senate at one point instead of the U.S. presidency. He said he's in the Senate race. He just had this ramble about how he cannot win re-election. That's what he was saying. He's like, we can't win the re-election, and we can only elect Trump. That's what he said. What? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like he was trying to say, like, we're the only ones that can win this election, I guess is what he was trying to say. And it's like, Jesus Christ, man, you don't even know what fucking race you're in. Like, Jesus. One thing I will say, just on this topic, because we're probably getting to the end of what a clip would be. Joe Biden versus Donald Trump as a Canadian in the general election is going to be entertaining as fuck. So I'm kind of... How do I feel now about the political cycle? I'm cynical, I guess. I've given up a little bit that Bernie's going to win. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he pulls it out of nowhere. I really have just conceded that. And I'm just looking forward to the entertainment of Biden versus Trump, because there's no good win there. No. I mean, I guess Biden would be less stressful on a lot of people because he wouldn't have to listen to... No, I can't even say that, because you want to say like, oh, you don't have to listen to the stupidity of Trump, but then you have to listen to Dementia Joe here. And
that's what I was saying. You just finished saying dementia, and that's kind of like a really touchy subject.
For sure.
Like how do you say that someone has dementia, but when they can't even get their words straight, there's definitely something going on.
I mean, hey, let's say he doesn't have dementia, sure, fine, but he's still not all there. No. He's still like not in the right mindset in his life to be president of the United States.
No, exactly.
Like, just listen to the difference between a Joe Biden talk and a Bernie Sanders talk, and oh my God, I wouldn't trust Joe Biden to run my YMCA.
Oh.
So
I wouldn't.
That's just my opinion. I don't know how everybody else feels, right?
Yeah.
So it is interesting. The other thing that I've talked about on this podcast before, so getting away from the actual politics of it and talking more about the ideologies of it, is it's just interesting to see. Rachel has joined us. Morning, Rachel. It's interesting to see how people are behaving and reacting in this political cycle, because I don't think it's as easy as centrists vote for Joe Biden, progressives vote for Bernie Sanders. I think there's a lot of manipulation with mainstream media, with social media. I think a lot of people are misinformed. I think a lot of people are scared, even though they want structural change. They think that Bernie Sanders won't beat Trump because that's a big talking point that's going around right now. And it's interesting to see polls of how everyone feels about Bernie Sanders' platform, but then still doesn't support Bernie.
Yeah.
Like 70+% of Americans believe want Medicare for all. And, you know, there's a lot of statistics like this, but it's just not showing up in the polls. The other interesting thing is all these young people that want to see change and are tired of the oligarchy that didn't come out to vote. So there's a lot of different, well, there's also some conspiratorial rumors that there's a lot of states that were miscounted. Like Massachusetts had their exit polls come out, and Bernie Sanders actually led in the exit polls. So they just ask people who they voted for as they leave. And the exit polls were like 3 or 4% off. So the exit polls actually had Sanders winning that state, but Joe Biden won by 3 points.
Yeah.
So there is some conspiracy type things there. Also, Texas apparently had a lot of issues with their voting booths. We all know what happened in Iowa. I think New Hampshire also had some issues. So, I mean, it's interesting, and it depends how far into that conspiratorial mindset you want to get to. And this goes back to what I said as young Colin Cutler as a teenager is this is why I had very little faith in the political process. And I always believe that even if you had a Bernie Sanders and everybody was on board, they would just manipulate it to be whatever they want. Yep. And this is the problem with all of this is what are you pointing at?
We went live to 0.
Oh.
What the hell? All right. Well, I guess we're still live on.
That's weird. Yeah, the time just went away. All right, maybe we'll just wrap this up pretty quick. Yeah, I don't know if I'm just talking to myself. No, people are still joining us.
People joining us, but we've lost our live counter.
That's really weird. What was I? Where was I?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It just was weird. It was like you were talking and
is weird.
It just went 0.
Well, we'll hope for the best.
We still have people on here, so
we'll hope for the best. But yeah, this is why I had very little faith in the political process to begin with. So one other little point to that, though, is with all these statistical anomalies that come out and the lack of investigation, I've always said that if this happened in a different country, like Iowa, for example, like the United States has gone in and like done coups for less than that. Like you look at Venezuela, I think I talked about this once before, but there's some journalists, Abby Martin from Empire Files being one, that would argue that Venezuela has a more democratic process in their elections than the United States does. The UN has gone in there and said that. It said they have a perfectly fine, legitimate election process. And then we still are going in there saying that they're fraudulent and that we should do regime change, or we Americans should do regime change. And they've said this Guaido's the new president, and they're, condemning Maduro and saying he wasn't elected by a popular vote, even though he was, right? But then in the United States, you have all this like potential voter fraud, and no one says a peep.
Yeah.
And there's been evidence of this forever, right? Voter suppression. There was people that would argue that a bunch of votes just got like sent away, physical copies just got sent away in 2006. I don't know how much of that's true, but at least there should be investigations to this.
Yeah.
And there just isn't. And if this happened in other countries, I think we would have something to say. So it's an interesting time for democracy. It's also interesting because for me, I really think Joe Biden will go through into the general and lose. And there's a lot of people. I think I was going to specify, but it's
Yeah.
not just like economists. It's not just pundits. It's also like some actors and other people that just have a platform. A lot of people are worried that if we do 4 more years of Trump in the United States, that it's just going to be the end of democracy in the United States. And who knows if he'll even give up after those 4 years. He's already made jokes about how he should get 2 more years because of the impeachment hoax and the Russia hoax, and the Democratic stole 2 years from him. And that's a scary thing to say as a president.
Yeah.
He also does very dictator-like things. He always has people praise him on camera, like on live TV. Like he had I think it was the guy from the CDC just talk about how amazing Trump is doing, and it was like this weird 2-minute praising of Trump. So I think that everyone should pay a little bit more attention to politics in their own country and abroad, because I feel like if we all pay a little bit more attention, then when it comes to these votes, and if people can make more informed decisions, maybe you can see change. And for a Bernie Sanders type person to win, you're going to need him to overperform massively to be able to become the nominee. So if people really want a revolution, like they talk about, and they really want to see structural change, then you need to go out and you need to make that happen, because it's not just going to happen on your own. It's only going to happen if you rally and get people behind and add that collectivism that I talked about in my original ideology. And we all need to help each other and do whatever we can to get the future that we want, because we are all just a bunch of people living in a society divided by black and white arguments. But we are here to help you explore the world of gray. Thank you for joining us. Happy Sunday. Peace, love,